Saturday afternoon, 3 separate wildfires broke out almost simultaneously around Spokane, Washington, the state's second largest city. By Sunday morning, officials had confirmed roughly 600 structures destroyed. By Monday, that number had climbed to around 700, with officials warning it could reach as high as 100 once another 400 damaged properties are fully assessed. More than 60,000 people in a metro area of roughly 230,000 residents were placed under evacuation orders. Spokane's mayor, Lisa Brown, didn't hedge when describing it. She called it the worst natural disaster her region has ever faced. Nearly half of the city's neighborhoods have either been evacuated or remain at risk. The fires have burned through more than 7,000 acres combined, and as of Sunday, containment on all 3 sat at 0%. Investigators have now arrested a 37-year-old man in connection with the cause of the most destructive of the 3 fires. Washington's governor has requested federal emergency assistance and spoken directly with the president. So today, we're breaking down exactly what happened, fire by fire, why the specific landscape around Spokane allowed flames to move as fast and as destructively as they did, what's being done right now to fight them, and where things stand as cooler weather finally starts moving in to help. No exaggeration required. The real numbers here are already staggering. If disaster coverage that treats an event like this with the seriousness it deserves matters to you, this is exactly the channel to have in your feed. Drop a comment and let me know if you have any connection to Spokane or Eastern Washington, family, friends, or if you've been directly affected by any of these 3 fires. And if you want the next update, the moment new containment or damage figures come in, subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get into what actually happened. The disaster unfolding around Spokane isn't a single wildfire. It's 3, all breaking out and growing explosively within roughly the same 24-hour window on Saturday, August 1st. Each threatening a different part of the metro area simultaneously and stretching firefighting resources across multiple fronts at once. The Old Trails fire, burning northwest of Airway Heights, has become the largest and most destructive of the 3, encompassing more than 3,600 acres according to Washington's Department of Natural Resources, an area of roughly 12 square miles. It's directly responsible for the bulk of the destroyed homes reported so far, tearing through residential neighborhoods along and around Indian Trail Road and West Rifle Club Road, where entire blocks of homes have been reduced to little more than ash and twisted metal. The Autumn Lane fire, burning near 9 Mile Falls to the north, became fire officials' top priority at one point over the weekend, as it threatened additional residential areas. And the Fairview fire, burning near the community of Meade, rounded out the trio, adding yet another simultaneous front for already stretched crews to manage. Washington emergency management officials have since begun referring to all 3 collectively as the Spokane area fires, reflecting just how intertwined the response effort has become across what would otherwise be 3 geographically separate incidents. The scale of displacement here is difficult to overstate. More than 60,000 people, some reports putting the figure closer to 65,000, were placed under evacuation orders as the fires spread, an extraordinary number for a metro area of roughly 230,000 residents, meaning close to a quarter of the entire population found themselves ordered out of their homes at some point over this weekend. Spokane's evacuation system uses a 3-level structure, and Mayor Brown specifically described a very large geography being placed under level 3, meaning get out immediately, the highest and most urgent evacuation designation the county uses. As of the most recent damage assessment, roughly 700 structures, the overwhelming majority of them homes, have been confirmed destroyed, with officials cautioning that number could rise as high as $1,100 once an additional 400 properties still awaiting full evaluation are assessed. Remarkably, as of the most recent updates, no deaths or injuries have been confirmed as a direct result of the fires, though officials have been careful to note that the sheer scale of destruction means a full accounting will take time. Washington's Adjutant General, along with residents themselves, have independently described returning to the hardest hit neighborhoods, areas like the one surrounding Rifle Club Road, as walking into what looks like a war zone, with leveled homes stretching for blocks in every direction. The personal accounts coming out of this disaster are genuinely difficult to hear. One couple, Alan and Kimberly Sather, were photographed embracing outside the duplex they rented after it burned to the ground. Evacuees have described leaving their homes with little more than what they could carry in the moment, some later returning to sift through hot rubble looking for anything recognizable among their belongings, while others continue waiting anxiously for word that it's finally safe to go back and see what, if anything, remains. Emergency shelter operations have scaled up significantly to support the displaced. The Spokane Convention Center has remained open as an evacuation shelter for residents. The Spokane County Fair and Expo Center has been converted into an animal shelter, housing 198 displaced pets as of the most recent count. And some evacuees have found temporary lodging at an RV and trailer hookup site at the Northern Quest Resort and Casino, illustrating just how far-reaching the search for safe, temporary housing has had to extend given the scale of this displacement. To understand why 3 separate fires around Spokane were able to grow this explosively and destroy this many structures within a single weekend, it helps to understand the specific landscape involved. Unlike a forest fire burning through dense timber, much of the terrain immediately around Spokane's outer neighborhoods consists of dry grass, shrub-steppe vegetation, and scattered stands of pine, exactly the kind of fuel that, once it dries out under summer heat, can ignite and spread with startling speed when winds pick up. Officials have specifically cited hot, dry, and gusty conditions as the driving factor behind the fire's rapid growth, precisely the combination that turns a fire from a containable brush fire into a fast-moving threat capable of jumping from wildland vegetation directly into residential subdivisions within a matter of hours. This is a pattern that's become an increasingly familiar and dangerous feature of wildfires in the American West more broadly. Fires that ignite in undeveloped or lightly developed land on a community's fringes, then race directly into residential areas built along that same wildland-urban interface, the zone where housing development meets fire-prone natural vegetation. Spokane's outer neighborhoods, like many rapidly growing communities across the West, have expanded significantly into exactly this kind of terrain in recent decades, which helps explain why a fire, igniting in what might otherwise be considered open, unpopulated land, was able to destroy hundreds of homes within its first 24 to 48 hours. On Monday night, the Spokane County Sheriff's Office arrested a 37-year-old man, identified as Aaron Farinacci, in connection with its ongoing investigation into the cause of the Old Trails fire, the most destructive of the 3 blazes. It's worth being precise here about what's actually been confirmed publicly. Authorities have described this as an arrest connected to their investigation into the fire's origin, and the full details of what that investigation has found, and what charges, if any, may ultimately follow, continue to develop. We'll follow this story and provide updates as confirmed details become available rather than speculating beyond what's actually been officially stated at this point. Given the scale of destruction, Washington Governor Bob Ferguson formally requested emergency support from the federal government, including assistance from FEMA, and confirmed he spoke directly with President Trump regarding the state's request. The kind of direct federal engagement at the governor level typically signals both the severity officials believe this disaster represents and the anticipated scale of the recovery and rebuilding effort that will be needed in the weeks and months ahead. Formal federal disaster declarations, when granted, typically unlock additional resources for both the immediate firefighting effort and longer-term individual assistance for residents who've lost homes, though the specific scope of any federal assistance package remains to be finalized as damage assessments continue. On the ground, fire crews from across Washington state and neighboring states have converged on the Spokane area, working around the clock and supported by aerial firefighting resources whenever weather conditions have safely allowed for their use. Coordinating 3 simultaneous, large, fast-moving fires threatening a major metro area simultaneously represents an enormous logistical challenge, one that's required resources and personnel well beyond what any single local fire department could provide on its own. Here's a genuinely hopeful development in an otherwise difficult story. Forecasters have pointed to cooler temperatures moving into the Spokane region as a factor that could meaningfully help firefighting efforts in the days ahead. A welcome shift after the hot, dry, windy conditions that fueled the fire's initial explosive growth over the weekend. By Monday, some evacuation levels had already been downgraded in parts of the affected area, specifically for portions of the Old Trails and Fairview fire zones, where the Spokane County Emergency Management Department reduced a stretch of territory between Magnesium Road and Francis Avenue from a level 2, be set, designation down to a level 1, get ready status, and encouraging, if still cautious, sign that conditions in at least some areas are beginning to stabilize. That said, as of the most recent containment figures, all 3 fires remained at 0% containment as recently as Sunday, meaning firefighters have not yet been able to establish a controlled perimeter around any of the 3 blazes. Cooler weather helps, but it doesn't instantly translate into containment, and residents across the broader affected area should expect the response and recovery effort to continue for some time, even as conditions gradually improve. It's worth placing the Spokane fires within the context of what's been an intense wildfire season across the broader western United States this summer. These 3 fires are among dozens burning simultaneously across the western states, collectively stretching the firefighting capacity of federal, state, and local agencies managing them all at once. Across Washington state alone, roughly 1,000 square miles have burned so far this year, and the severity and speed of the Spokane fires specifically reflect a broader pattern of increasingly explosive, fast-moving wildfire behavior that's become a defining feature of recent fire seasons across the region, driven by a combination of prolonged drought conditions, above average summer heat, and the kind of hot, dry, gusty weather pattern that turned this particular weekend from a routine fire risk into the worst natural disaster Spokane's own mayor says her region has ever experienced. If you're anywhere in the Spokane metro area currently under an evacuation order, continue following official guidance from Spokane County Emergency Management. Rather than assuming it's safe to return simply because you haven't seen new fire growth reported, since damage assessment and continued fire behavior monitoring are still very much active processes across all 3 fire zones. If your specific area has been downgraded from a level 3 or level 2 evacuation to a lower level, that's a genuinely positive sign. But continue monitoring official channels for any further changes, since conditions in an active, uncontained wildfire situation can shift quickly if winds pick up again. If you've been displaced and need shelter, the Spokane Convention Center remains open for residents. The Spokane County Fair and Expo Center is available for displaced pets, and additional lodging options, including the RV and trailer hookup site at Northern Quest Resort and Casino, have been made available as the response has scaled up. If your property has been damaged or destroyed, documenting what you can safely observe and connecting with Washington State's emergency management resources and any FEMA assistance programs that become available following the governor's federal request will matter significantly for the recovery process ahead. If you're outside the immediate fire zone but in the broader Spokane region, air quality remains a serious concern given the thick smoke that's blanketed parts of eastern Washington throughout this event, and checking current air quality index readings before spending extended time outdoors is worth doing regardless of whether your specific neighborhood has been under any evacuation order. What's happened in Spokane this past weekend is a stark, concrete illustration of exactly the kind of disaster that increasingly defines summer in the American West. Multiple fires igniting nearly simultaneously, explosive growth driven by hot, dry, windy conditions, and a wildland-urban interface where residential development sits close enough to fire-prone vegetation that hundreds of homes can be lost within the first day or two of ignition. The scale here, 60,000 plus people evacuated, hundreds of homes destroyed, a major American city's mayor calling it the worst natural disaster her region has faced, deserves to be understood and remembered well beyond the initial news cycle, especially for the thousands of families now facing the long, difficult process of rebuilding. In the immediate term, expect continued firefighting efforts across all 3 fire zones as cooler weather moves in, along with continued damage assessment work that will likely finalize a more precise total for destroyed and damaged structures beyond the current estimate of 700 to potentially 100. The ongoing investigation into the Old Trails Fire's cause will likely continue to develop, and we'll provide updates on confirmed details as authorities release them. Federal disaster assistance following Governor Ferguson's request and his direct conversation with the president is worth watching for confirmation and details on its specific scope in the coming days. We'll be tracking this recovery closely, from containment progress on all 3 fires to the human recovery effort for the tens of thousands of displaced residents. If you want those updates the moment they happen, subscribing and turning on notifications is the best way to stay with a story that Spokane's own leadership has described in the starkest possible terms. Before you go, drop a comment and let me know if you or anyone you know has been affected by these fires, and if you have any connection to Spokane or Eastern Washington more broadly. These threads genuinely shape what we follow up on next. And if this breakdown helped you understand the real scale of what's happening in Spokane right now, helps this reach people with family, friends, or property in the affected area who need clear, accurate information during what their own mayor has called the worst disaster their community has ever faced. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.